Hello. Today we're going to talk about youthful offender status. Now, before I get into any of the real details, I want to talk about what youthful offender status is and go from there. Youthful offender status is a status that is given to someone who is over the age of majority in Alabama, which is 19, but under the age of 21. It's kind of like being treated as a juvenile, but not necessarily, because a person is an adult. And it's designed to keep a person's record clean, to allow them to go to school, to join the military, basically keep them from having the stigma of having a conviction for a crime on their record. Now, it's available to anyone who is under the age of 21, and I don't think there are any limitations on whatever crime it could be. In short, it could be a murder crime, and people could get youthful offender status technically. There's some things that I don't really think it would be worth it. I guess theoretically they're eligible for, like a speeding ticket, but usually it's just simply limited to felonies and misdemeanors. Now, the reason that they do it is once again to protect the stigma. A lot of times if you have a conviction on your record, it'll keep you from getting a job, joining the military, going to school, and it just basically looks bad. So they came up with this to try to protect you. Now, what does a person have to do to get youthful offender status? Well, let's assume that they've committed a crime. So they either have to go to the municipal court, they have to go to the district court or circuit court. They have to request youthful offender status. And usually the judge makes sure that you have done this. However, many times judges make mistakes, prosecutors make mistakes, and defense attorneys make mistakes. So you want to make sure it is on your record that you have requested it. As a judge says, look at the record. Pay attention to what's being put on there. Now, once you've requested youthful offender status, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to get it. The judge has to approve it. This is where the law comes in, and this is where the steps come in about what you need to do. This is covered in the Alabama Code under section 15, 19.1 through I think 19.7 or 8, 19.7. And it goes over the different steps of the regulation. Once again, section 15, 19, starting on section 1. So if you're going to look it up, you can go to our website, hit a resource link to the Alabama Code, and it's 15.19.1. Or you can, of course, just look it up yourself. Now, what happens is a person has to request it. Once they've requested youthful offender status, then a report, an investigation, is conducted by the court. Now, the court has discretion on how they want to do this investigation. Sometimes, if it's a relatively minor offense, like, let's say, marijuana second, they'll pretty much give it to you automatically if you have a clean record. On more serious crimes, like a felony, the judge is going to want to do an investigation. They'll get the probation officer or court referral officer to dig deeper. They'll want to know about your family history, your school records, your educational history, how far you got in school, your medical history if you have certain problems like psychological disorders, and any other relevant factors. The reason they do that is because they simply want to know. So if you're going to have an investigation done, you want to work with them and try to make sure you get everything done that should be done. Now, after they do this, they have a hearing on it to determine if you should be given the status or not. You'll get a chance to speak if you like. Your attorney will be given the opportunity, any witnesses you want. But the prosecution also gets a chance to talk about it too. So they can have an opinion. Now, sometimes they'll agree to it, sometimes they won't. It depends on the facts of the case and the situation. Now, once that is done, and everyone's had their say, the judge has the final say about granting youthful offender status. If they agree to it and the judge says, I'm going to give it to you, so you get youthful offender status, it stays off your record. Not, at least the conviction does. You can still go to jail, you can still be put on probation. But let's say he grants it. Well, it stays off your record. And then once it's off your record, then what ends up happening is that he can either, if there's an agreement for a sentence, they can take it. They can put you on probation. He can put you in jail up to 3 years if it's a felony and the sentence called for a sentence. The worst thing he could do is 3 years. Now, if it's a misdemeanor, he can't give you more than what the misdemeanor would call for. The maximum fine is $1,000. Now, what happens if he denies youthful offender status? Stay cool. if you get youthful offender status, you're still entitled to a trial by jury. And he can still, at a later date, change his ruling and grant you youthful offender status as long as he has jurisdiction on it. One time, years ago, I represented a boy that was, I think, 19, who was accused of shooting his friend with a gun. They'd gotten in a fight over a girl. We went to trial. We lost the case. But in the process of losing the case, it became abundantly clear that he was provoked. The other boy had started it. And that, for lack of a better term, he wasn't that bad of a guy. The two boys made up, and it was abundantly clear he didn't have to shoot him. He could have avoided it, but his friend forgave him. They were friends again, and the judge changed the decision and granted him youthful offender status. So sometimes you can lose the case and win the war. So even if it's denied, you still have a right to a trial by jury, and the judge can change their opinion later on. Now, that being said, in order to get youthful offender status, there's some issues you want to prove or show. Number one, that it was a one-time mistake. Number two, that you were with the wrong crowd. Number three, that you're innocent and shouldn't be given it at all, or shouldn't be convicted at all. Number four, that you're guilty but you're a good person that deserves another chance. Number five, your behavior would be justifiable or there are mitigating circumstances. And number six, and finally, I would say that you can be saved. That you made a mistake, but you're a good kid, and if you cut me some slack, I won't make the mistake again. Now, that covers a lot of it. And I think there's still a lot to be covered on the topics because it's in-depth and every situation is a little bit different. Now, one thing I want to emphasize on this, you have got to you've got to request youthful offender. And you also want to make sure that it's given to you at every section of the judicial process. What I mean by that is many times a case is sent to district court, which is just a preliminary hearing. Youthful offender is not requested there because it's simply not appropriate at that stage. It gets sent upstairs to the circuit court, you request it there, and it gets granted, but you would still show your arrest and it would still show the district court proceedings. So people would still be questioning why you got arrested for possession of a controlled substance. So keep an eye on it, check the record, know your rights, and make sure the courts are doing what they should do. Thank you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to give us a call.